Hi, everybody. My name's Kelly Ashby, and I'm with Kelly Ashby Consulting. I am so thankful that you've joined me today on this Raising Resilient Kids Returning to School During COVID-19 session. So I have a lot of information to talk about with you about today. And so what I've done is I've broken it up into kind of segments. So I'm going to be talking to you about resiliency, what resiliency is, how it's connected to emotional intelligence. I'm going to be talking to you about how behaviors are linked to our emotions and give you a little bit of information about the science behind emotions. I'm going to introduce a set of principles called the ruler principles to you so that you can apply them right now as soon as you finish listening to this video. I'm also going to give you some research data because you might be sitting there wondering, why should I even care about emotional intelligence and resiliency? Well, I'm going to share some research data that tells you or answers some of those questions. Why is it important to our success? How is it important to our success, as well as our child's success in school? I'm also going to provide you with some age-specific best practices that you can apply right now when you're done listening to this video to help you and your child navigate this roller coaster I call the Corona coaster. I'm going to wrap up with introducing you to the GENOS model of emotional intelligence and allow you to take just a quick assessment so that you can kind of rate yourself as well as rate your child on some of the behaviors associated with resiliency and emotional intelligence. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive into the information. Let me pull up my slide deck real quick here for you so that we can get going. All right. Okay, so first off, just a little bit of information about me. I've spent pretty much my entire career in higher education training and educating college students about leadership development and how to prepare for the workplace. So about 3 years ago, I decided to leave higher ed and start my own business, start my own consulting and training business. And I focus right now on helping individuals succeed and helping organizations reach their goal. And I do this by focusing on 3 things. One, I help people develop the skills, workplace skills and leadership skills that are necessary to be successful at work. I also help companies, departments, and units create positive workplace cultures. And I also focus on increasing employee engagement. And one of the things that I focus on, or the underlying principles in all of my work, has to do with emotional intelligence. I'm a certified GENOS International emotional intelligence practitioner and Ignite instructor. So I have the training and the knowledge to be able to talk about this and to help individuals and groups increase their own emotional intelligence and their resiliency to be able to bounce back when we encounter negative situations and crises. So let's go into a little bit about my clients. Some different logos and different companies are popping up. I've worked with everyone from K through 12 students, higher ed students, as well as clear up to mid and upper level leaders and members of chambers of commerce and leadership programs, various leadership programs, as well as executive leadership programs within various higher education institutions. So you can see some of the companies I've worked with. Some of them are local, some of them are not local, but hopefully you recognize a few on that particular slide. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Why resiliency and its link to emotional intelligence? So let's get down to kind of the why did I decide to do this? So one of the reasons that I decided to do this was I saw this posting on social media, probably about a month ago. And it really resonated with me. And so what I understood or came to understand from talking with different people is that really, the decision makers who were put in position to decide what to do about schools reopening really were in a no-win situation. Now let's face it, no matter what they decided, they were not going to be able to please everybody. And that's a really difficult position to be in. And so I know and I understand that some people are pleased that we're returning to school, and then other people are really concerned. But remember, you are really a key person in influencing your child's attitude and mood about returning to school. So it's really important that, for one, you be angry or sad or worried or concerned in private, because what will happen is your children will mirror and mimic kind of the emotions and the behaviors that you are demonstrating in front of them, and they will take that to school with them. So discuss your frustrations away from the kids. If you leave this session with nothing else, just remember this: Be a sounding board for their worries and their disappointments and their frustrations. Be a really good listener, but most importantly, be a positive role model of perseverance. So we'll go into some more information. When I talk about kids will mirror and mimic what you're saying and doing, let me show you a few slides. So for example, some of them are kind of funny. This little girl is mirroring exactly what this older lady is doing. I assume that's her mom, on the laptop, chewing on the pen, on the pretend cell phone. But they'll also mimic our emotions or our display of frustration. And even when we're overwhelmed or we're stressed out. And I'm not saying don't be honest with your children about what you're feeling. Just be mindful that they're going to mirror and mimic what they see from you. So this is a cute little cartoon about a dad, obviously probably a little road rage with frustration about some driver out there. And you can see these two children in the back seat also, shaking their fist and yelling and screaming at that person. But they'll also mimic and mirror some of your healthier behaviors. So one of the proactive strategies for building resilience is mindfulness, yoga, taking some time to journal, taking some time out to reflect upon your day. So this strategy is also one that you can teach to your kids. And there are several other ones that you can role model for your kids too to increase their resiliency. But the important takeaway about this is that your kids will mirror and mimic what they're seeing from you. So we know that in school as well as out of school, we spend a lot of time educating students and adults as well about what kinds of things need to be done to take care of our physical health. We also learn about what's a healthy amount of fruits and vegetables and proteins and carbohydrates to have, even calories in a day, depending on our gender as well as our body type and that type of thing. We also certainly obviously invest a lot of time in helping our young people learn and develop academically. But one thing that gets kind of the short end of the stick that I don't think is spent much time on is this thing called emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence, I'll go into what it is here in the next couple of slides, but it's really important as far as helping us especially be resilient. So when we're aware of the way that we're feeling, then we can manage it. If we can manage it, then we can make sure that we do things to help us be resilient and bounce back when we run into those situations that maybe are bringing us down, stressing us out, or making us feel some of those unproductive feelings. So I said I'd explain what emotional intelligence is. Here we go. So emotional intelligence is the ability or set of skills to be aware, understand, regulate, and influence the emotions within ourselves and others. So really it's about using emotions and being smarter with feelings in order to generate and get positive results. So what do I mean by that? Well, when we understand the influence and the impact that emotions have on our decision-making, our performance, and our behaviors, then we're better able to manage it so that we don't end up spiraling out of control when we bump into a negative situation. So what do I mean about being able to positively influence other people? Well, again, when we better understand how emotions work and how we're biologically wired, we're better equipped to be able to help others manage those negative feelings, like in this case, your children, helping them manage those unproductive feelings and those feelings of anxiety and stress, worry, and concern. So I'm going to go into some strategies today in this session that will help you, especially as it relates to going back to school, but also some of the stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you, you can use, every day, which will be really helpful. So I'm also going to give you some information about why EI is important for adults. So this quick slide talks about some of the research that emotional intelligence has been connected to. And so they've looked at the role that emotional intelligence for adults as far as their careers and their productivity. So it's been linked to increased sales and profits. So if you're a salesperson, you might want to take a look into how you could increase your emotional intelligence. It's also been linked to increased customer service. So if you work at a place that cares about customer service, you might want to take a look at some of this stuff. It's also been linked to increased leadership ability and leadership effectiveness. And then it's also been linked to increased performance and productivity for individuals at the workplace. Other things it's been linked to is reducing the cost associated with turnover, which is oftentimes a byproduct of stress, burnout, and negative or toxic workplaces. It's also been linked to reducing hiring mistakes and helping companies save lots and lots of money by reducing those hiring mistakes. But it's also been linked to reducing our reactions, the negative reactions to negative people, negative situations, and crises. So what about for our kids? Well, again, research has shown that emotional intelligence and the ability to be resilient has shown that it will increase your children's social skills, their productivity, their leadership ability, and social interactions with other people, as well as it's been linked to increased or improved academic performance. It's been linked to decreasing anxiety, stress, and depression, and it's even been found to be able to link or decrease instances of bullying in schools. So let's go into, this is one of those segments, so I'll take a little bit of time so that when people, fast forward or rewind to this section, they can get to the right starting place. So the next thing we're going to talk about is this link between behaviors and emotions, and dive a little bit into the science behind emotions. So this slide looks like an iceberg, and the reason for that is that oftentimes when people are feeling emotions, we don't really know what they're feeling until those emotions show up as behaviors. And so you see under the waterline of this iceberg different emotional feelings that people might be feeling at a variety of times. And then you see some words above the waterline that would be more visible that are really the behaviors that are a result of some of these emotions. So for example, if you or your child are feeling anxious, well, that sometimes shows up as being more reactive than you normally would be. So maybe you snap out or they snap out in anger as a result to feeling some of these feelings of anxiety. When we're overly stressed, sometimes how that shows up is more aggressive behavior, at least more aggressive than normal. So maybe your child is getting into perhaps more squabbles with their sibling or more fights with their siblings, or perhaps even you as their parents. When we're overly concerned about things, tends to show up as being really problem focused. And so you might be paying attention to the conversations around the dinner table, especially around the time that school is ready to start. What is the focus of the conversation? Is it about the problems and the obstacles and the barriers and the negative things, or can we spin that and talk more about some of the positive sides about returning to school and the reopening of school? So when those kinds of conversations come up, that's really problem focused, you might want to start asking some questions that get at what are those underlying feelings. And in some cases, those feelings might be of concern and worry and stress. So let's keep going. Science of emotions. One of the most important things that about the science of emotions is that we know that emotions influence our decision-making, our behaviors, and our performance. And so far, whenever I've trained or coached anybody on this information, I have never run into somebody or anybody who has said these three things are not important in their work, in their home life, and even in their relationships. Let me give you an example. So kids know that they don't come and ask you for a raise in their allowance, or for longer curfew, or some leniency perhaps on your chores when you're in a bad mood. You also know that you don't go to the boss and ask for a raise or more resources when they're in a bad mood. So we know that emotions impact our and others' decision making. So we're more likely to probably get a no if we went to those people when they were in a bad mood. We also know that emotions impact behavior. I talked a little bit about this with the iceberg slide. What do I mean by that? Well, oftentimes our emotions show up in a couple of ways. One is our behaviors, our nonverbals, and our facial expressions. You know when somebody's happy, relaxed, and in a good mood by looking at their face, even listening to their tone of voice. You also know when somebody's angry, upset, or down, again by looking at their nonverbals. So we can tell how somebody's perhaps feeling by looking at where those emotions are showing up, and oftentimes that ends up being our behaviors. Thirdly, our performance. We know that emotions impact our performance. Think about how well you perform at work, and in your child's case, how well they perform at school when they're relaxed and happy and in a good mood, compared to when they're overly stressed, overly worried, or angry and upset. So you can just imagine, at work, how well you perform your daily tasks, but think about how your child approaches perhaps his or her homework or tests and quiz if they're being impacted by unproductive emotions. So let me talk you through how this happens and why this happens. So we know that emotions impact our behaviors and our decision making. Let me explain kind of the neuroscience behind emotions, and this slide is read from left to right. So stick with me here as I go through this. So what happens, and this goes back to, how we're biologically wired. So there's nothing we can do about the fact that this happens to us as far as, how we react to events. So let me explain what I mean by that. So every event that we have, every encounter we have with another person, the first thing that happens is the amygdala, which is found in the emotional part of our brain, tags that event as either a reward or a threat. And the reason for this is that, and like I said, we're biologically wired to have this happen. The reason for this, it goes back to when we had to live in the caves and fight saber-toothed tigers to stay alive. So the emotional part of the brain, its job is to quickly size up whether or not this person or this situation is a positive, a negative, a reward, or a threat. Now let me walk you through the rest of this slide, and we'll take the northern or the upper trail first, if you don't mind me using that little reference there. So let's say your child goes into the classroom and is greeted warmly by their peers and their teacher. So what happens then is the emotional part of the brain immediately tags that event as a reward, as a positive. Your child might feel valued and useful and happy as a result of this encounter because they've been greeted warmly when they've stepped into the classroom. So the amygdala immediately sends a message to the prefrontal cortex, which is located here. This is the thinking part of the brain. The thinking part of the brain gets that message from the amygdala and the emotional part of the brain, and then it helps decide, how should I react next? And so your child has interpreted this event, the amygdala has interpreted this event as a reward and a positive, sends a message immediately to the prefrontal cortex, and so your child also smiles, says hello back. It impacts their behaviors and their decisions in how to properly react to that situation. Okay? Now let's take the southern route of this particular slide. Going back to the event, let's say your child walks into the room and is not greeted by anybody and maybe is ignored. Obviously, that would not be a very pleasant experience, right? That wouldn't be pleasant for us as adults either. So what happens is the amygdala, again, the emotional part of the brain, immediately tags that event as a possible threat or something that's at least going to cause worry and stress and frustration and concern. Why are people ignoring me? What did I do? Why don't they like me? Might be some of the things that immediately are going through your child's mind. And again, the amygdala immediately sends that message to the prefrontal cortex of, how do I react in this? Now, back in when we had to live in the caves, this would be a situation of fight or flight. What do I do? What decisions do I need to make about the appropriate response, behavioral response to this situation? So what happens then is our prefrontal cortex, because it's in that fight or flight stage of thinking, it narrows our options, it limits our decision-making ability, and actually inhibits our thinking skills. So a good example of this would be, have you ever been in a verbal altercation with somebody, and when you left the situation and removed yourself from that altercation, it was then that you thought of all the great things that you wish that you would have said? And I think almost all of us have had that experience. This is an example of what's going on between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So it narrows and limits our options. When we experience things as a reward, it actually has a broaden and build effect. We're more engaged, we're able to think more creatively about options, we're able to take more risks, and it's that broaden and build effect as far as how our thinking works. So that's a little bit about the science behind emotions and how emotions end up impacting our behaviors. Now, there's nothing we can do about being biologically wired to have this happen. What we can do, though, is to learn how to press pause and stop before we automatically react with behaviors that might not, be the best for us or the best for the situation. So, talk real quickly. I'm only going to pull a few of these out, but what are some of the effects of negative emotions? So again, that southern trail across that last slide. Well, we know from research again that when we experience things as a threat or something creates unproductive feelings, it ends up narrowing our thinking, limiting our interpretation of the events. We might shrink from the opportunity and actually show disengagement behaviors. Think about the situation, the example I gave you. Your child's not greeted, they're ignored when they enter the classroom. They might just go and sit in their chair and stick to themselves rather than being more outgoing and going and talking with their friends. And actually, we know from research that these negative emotions have a longer lasting effect than positive ones. So that's important to know as it relates to future conversation about building resiliency. Now let's take a look at the result of positive emotions. So like I said, it has a broaden and build effect on our prefrontal cortex. So we're more rational and creative when we're problem solving. We're more open to new ideas. We're willing to take more risks. We're willing to think more deeply about issues and see more options. And in fact, it actually releases chemicals that are important for learning. So as much as possible that we can create this kind of an environment for our kids, it's going to impact their academic performance. All right. So I talked about the left-hand side of this particular slide. Let's take a look a little bit at the right-hand side. So emotions can also have a positive impact. So we know that when people feel valued, we know that they oftentimes will be more engaged. When they are informed, they'll be more bought into whatever the activity is. And when they feel appreciated, they'll demonstrate more support for whatever it is that they're being asked to do. So there's positive results from positive emotions as well. All right, so let's go into emotional intelligence and the ruler principles. Now this is a great set. I found this on Yale's Center for Emotional Intelligence website. So I'm going to go into the set of principles. Now this is something that you could apply right now with your child. So let me briefly go through this, and then I'll go into more depth about what you can do right now to help your child learn how to do this. It's also connected or linked to the GENOS International Model, especially two particular competency areas. I'll explain that a little bit later. So first of all, the first R has to do with recognizing the emotions. Recognizing and being self-aware. Knowing what's going on with us at different times helps us to better than manage those emotions in both ourselves as well as other people. The U in this model or these set of principles is understanding. So this has to do with understanding the cause and consequences of emotion. And so understanding the impact that they're going to have, kind of like the neuroscience of emotions, understanding that emotions will then contribute to displays of behavior as well as decision making and performance. The L in this model is about labeling, and then what I'm talking about here is being able to develop that emotional vocabulary so we accurately label our emotions and get beyond, especially get our kids beyond just good and bad when you ask how they're feeling and that's the answer that you get. The E in this model is about expressing emotions, and this has to do with obviously expressing those emotions in the right time, right place, to the right person, and to the right degree. And the last R is about regulating emotions. So developing strategies that help us manage those feelings so that we can make wise choices about how we respond in emotional situations. So let's dive into this a little bit further. Like I said, this comes from Yale and the Center for Emotional Intelligence. So these first two really, actually the first three, have a lot to do with the GENOS International Model, the competency of self-awareness. So the first one is called recognizing emotions. And this has to do with better understanding ourselves as well as others so that we can work better with others. And as it relates to being parents and working with children, it's being able to recognize when your child needs some emotional support. So it's picking up on those cues. So what goes into this, or what could you do as a parent to apply this this recognizing emotion? We'll discuss how emotions are expressed in our faces and in our bodies, and even in our tone of voice with your children. One of the things that you might want to do is to even pay attention to TV shows. And when you see a scene or a character demonstrating either, unproductive feelings of stress, worry, concern, anger, whatever, you might even want to pause the show and ask your child, hey, what do you think that person's feeling right now? And how do they know? And like I said, it shows up in the body language and the tone of voice. So it's important to recognize this piece, because not only can we recognize it in ourselves, but then we can also teach our kids how to recognize it in others, which is a key foundational piece to developing empathy. All right, second point, notice and honor your child's and your own emotions. Now, what I mean by that is, in one of my commercials for this particular series was talking about how saying things like, just toughen up, work harder, push through, are really not very helpful as it relates to building resiliency and helping your child manage their emotions and navigate their emotions. Noticing and honoring your child's feelings by having a discussion with them, and having a discussion that allows them to be open and honest. So acknowledge your child's and your own emotions instead of dismissing and minimizing them is really key in helping to build resiliency and develop emotional intelligence. All right, let's keep moving. Understanding emotions. So understanding emotions allows you to anticipate, manage, and prevent unwanted feelings or unproductive feelings in both yourself as well as others. So one of the things that you can do right now with your child is to reflect on your own emotional responses and your own reactions to the current situation, as well as your interpretation of the situation or event. So reflect on your own and encourage your child to do the same thing. Explore how feeling this way influences your child's or your own behavior. So helping to understand kind of the underlying emotions behind the behavior helps us to anticipate, manage, and prevent those unproductive feelings. The other things that you might want to do is to ask your child questions about what emotions might be underlying or driving their behaviors. I guess I kind of repeated myself there. But if they're fighting more with their sibling, sit them down and try to get a handle on what are they feeling, why are these unproductive behaviors showing up, and what's behind it. So getting that understanding of the emotions and that the cause and consequences really helps with this understanding emotions piece. The L in this model has to do with labeling emotions. And it's really important to understand that I'm not talking about labeling children, I'm talking about labeling emotions. And so it's building that, that emotional vocabulary, if you will. So when we communicate feelings accurately, we're better equipped to manage those emotions. So finding the best word to describe your feeling and encouraging your children to get beyond just answering good or bad. Let's dive into that a little bit further. When you say you feel good, does that mean you feel happy? Does that mean you feel energized? Does that mean you feel excited? What does that mean when you say you feel good? Or if they say bad, does that mean that they're feeling anxious, worried, concerned, stressed? What exactly are they feeling, so that you're better able to help them? By building your own family's feeling word vocabulary, you can do such things like I mentioned about pausing a TV show or a movie, but you can also do it when they're reading books or even in conversations. When you notice somebody feeling a certain emotion because of the behavior they're exhibiting, ask your child to pay attention and see what kind of cues they can pick up on both the facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language. All right, the E in this set of principles is about expressing emotions. Learning how and when to display our feelings is really an important skill set so that we act skillfully and appropriately in social situations. So it's really important that adults model acceptable social behavior when it relates to displaying what we would call more unproductive or unhelpful sets of emotions. So help children learn how to evaluate the best time, best place, right person, and right degree of expressing their feelings when they're feeling upset. So what I mean by that is if they're upset with you about something, perhaps, yelling and screaming at you in the store, in public, or in a restaurant is not the appropriate time and place to have that conversation. So teaching them about how to judge that and to find the right time and place, and certainly the right person to have that discussion with, is critical. All right, the last R, regulating emotions. So this has to do with developing strategies that will help you manage feelings to make wise choices about how we respond to emotional situations. So it's important that you model different and effective strategies when you're managing your own emotions. So like I said earlier in that one of those first slides, have those conversations about your frustrations and your worries and concerns, have those in private. And so that when you're in front of your children, you're helping them look at the positives about the return to school and school starting again. Help children find useful and successful strategies for managing the range of emotions that they experience. So when we're upset, what are things that we can do to help manage those things? And so talked about, one of the proactive strategies in helping to build resilience was mindfulness practice and yoga and journaling and that type of thing. Well, other strategies include physical exercise, maybe to go for a run or go for a bike ride or do something to get out that negative energy associated with being upset and being stressed out. Another good way is to talk to people. Have a good friend, or maybe they can talk with you or a sibling about what they're feeling. So those are just some examples about different strategies for managing the range of emotions. And again, validating that your child's emotions are okay, and clarify acceptable behaviors for expressing those. So if they're upset and they're feeling stressed, making sure that they understand that feeling those ways, it's okay. It's how we express them and how we manage those that's really important for them to learn. All right, so why should we care about this? So what does the research say? So even if you're not interested in learning how to build your resilience for, maybe your child is fine about going back to school right now and they're actually really excited and they're not having any negative reactions. Well, here are some other reasons why you might be interested in enhancing their emotional intelligence and their resiliency. So here's the case for building emotional intelligence amongst kids. And again, like I said, emotional intelligence is tied to building resiliency. Well, what we know is that emotional intelligence is a top predictor for variation in success and happiness. And so what do I mean by that? Well, what research has shown, and this was in Psychology Today back in 2016, is that emotional intelligence accounts for 54% of people's success and happiness in life. I'm talking about happiness in relationships, in their effectiveness, in the tasks that they're posed with, in their physical health, and even the quality of life. But it's also been found to be linked to helping kids get higher grades, be successful and stay in school, and make healthier choices. Let's fast forward to past K-12. The other part of the research that Harvard, Stanford, and the Carnegie Foundation found is that emotional intelligence and being able to manage oneself and personal conduct is also linked to job success. And I'm talking about getting a job, keeping a job, and get promoted in a job. So what they found was that only 15% was linked to the technical skills. 85% of job success, getting, keeping, and getting promoted, was linked to personal conduct and the ability to put other people at ease. Those two pieces are two of the key cornerstone foundational pieces to emotional intelligence. Let's keep going. What about other data? Well, this year, 2020, again in Psychology Today, McCann found that IQ, as far as academic performance, IQ accounts for about 15% of the association between IQ and academic performance. Conscientiousness, meaning, how well do you remember your homework, meet deadlines, remembering to turn things in, things like that, accounts for about 5% of the association between conscientiousness and academic performance. But look at that long one in the middle, that long bar in the middle. Emotional understanding and emotional management account for 19% of academic performance, successful academic performance. Now, emotional understanding and emotional management, those are two of the competency or skill areas for the GENOS model. And so when we can understand our emotions and then manage those emotions, those in combination together there account for even more connection or association with successful academic performance than even IQ. So that's why investing in emotional intelligence, learning more about it and helping your child develop their emotional intelligence is so important. Even beyond K-12, again, emotional intelligence has twice the power of IQ to predict performance and is a better predictor of employee skill, knowledge, or expertise. So things like achievement, emotional intelligence competencies include things like achievement, cooperation, being able to work well with others, being motivated, being empathetic, being flexible, those kinds of things have twice the predictive power than IQ. Cognitive, intelligent competencies such as analytical thinking, conceptual thinking, and information seeking. So what do students who are high in emotional intelligence do differently? So I'll quickly go through these slides to give you an idea. Well, they're better, it's linked to the ruler principles. They use better processes to regulate their emotions. They pick strategies that are more appropriate and effective for the situations that they are in. And they also are able or better equipped to implement those strategies. Again, here's that vocabulary, the labeling of emotions. They use their vocabulary, their emotional vocabulary to accurately identify the emotions, which allows us to better manage them when we can accurately label them. And they're better able to recognize these emotions in other people too. They develop the skills for reading people's body language, understanding tone of voice, and be able to develop those skills that are related to empathy. They're also better able to see things from other people's point of view. And certainly understanding things from multiple perspectives helps us set us up for success in working better with other people, being able to collaborate and cooperate with other people better. Students who are high in emotional intelligence are also quick to help other people. They use the tools to manage their emotions effectively, and they're even more comfortable saying no to peers. And so I'm sure that you as parents can already think of situations where being able to, your child's ability to say no to their peers when necessary to keep them safe or to help them make healthy choices is really an important skill. So let's get into the next section of what you can do right now. How can parents help their children navigate the emotions of school reopening? So in this section, I'm going to go into maybe some of the emotions that you or even your child might be experiencing as we think about going back to school during COVID-19. And I'm even going to be talking about some of the emotions for those of you that might be having your child learn remotely. So first and foremost, maybe your child is scared to go back to school. Well, some of the things that you can do right now is have an open conversation about what is worrying him or her. Again, asking questions that allow your son or daughter to dive a little bit deeper into, what's behind the behaviors, what are they worried about. Let him or her know that it's natural to feel anxious. I mean, even in the best of times, and hopefully you remember this experience, even in the best of times, there's always a little bit of nervousness and excitement about going back to school, the start of new school year. Who's going to be in my class? What is my teacher going to be like? Am I going to be successful in the classes that I'm taking if you're a high school student? Some of that kind of stuff. Be honest with them. Discuss some of the changes, especially during COVID-19. Discuss some of the changes they may expect at school, especially for your students who have experienced the classroom in what we would call the normal situation. So make sure that your students or your child, excuse me, understand that masks may be required, and that there may be some strategies to maintain physical distance, 6 feet of physical distance. That might even show up in the lunchroom, at recess, and certainly in the classroom. Reassure him or her about the safety measures to prevent spreading germs, especially your little ones. Make sure they understand the importance of washing hands and teaching them to cough and sneeze into their elbow. And again, remind your child about the positives. You know what? You get to learn new material. You get to talk with, even if it's remotely, get to talk with your teacher via the computer. You may even get to interact with your classmates via the computer, those kinds of things. All right, so how about if your children are staying home and will be attending school virtually? Maybe they're feeling isolated from their teachers and friends, knowing that some of their friends are going to school in a face-to-face situation. Well, remind your son or daughter that, that learning can happen anywhere, that their learning is not going to be jeopardized because they're learning in a virtual setting. And remind them too that they can continue to keep in touch with friends and teachers online. Reassure them that as soon as it's safe to do so for everyone, that they will return to school as soon as you can feel comfortable sending them back to school. Look for safe online games, social media, and video chat programs that allow your child to play with their friends and connect with their friends in a safe manner. And even talk to their teacher to see if they have creative ideas for how you can help keep your child connected to both them as a teacher as well as their friends. So what if your child is feeling excited about returning to school? Maybe they don't have any concerns at all, but you want to get across these precautions that are going to be in place this year without alarming them. Well, the best and simplest set of information for kids, especially younger ones again, is that piece about regular hand washing. And also teaching them that, what we need to do is wash our hands for 20 seconds. So teaching them, sing the happy birthday song through twice, and that lasts about 20 seconds. So teaching them some fun ways to engage in that safe behavior as far as a way to be careful about spreading germs. One of the important pieces in this is to not just tell them to wash their hands and, to tell them to do so regularly, but to explain the reason why behind it. So if we can explain the reason why, the more we wash our hands and keep ourselves safe, the greater the likelihood that we're going to be able to keep schools open and return to whatever normal will be as soon as possible. Again, show them how to cover a cough or sneeze into their elbow, and to make sure that they understand the importance of telling you if they develop a cough or have difficulty breathing, that they inform you of that as soon as possible. The other thing that I want to make sure that you understand and have a conversation with your child about is to explain that perhaps every student may not be following the same precautions, that different families maybe, have different situations and conditions, health conditions that make them want to take different precautions, and that they may believe a different set of strategies for keeping their family safe. This is one of those pieces of understanding other people's perspectives. So this is also a piece where you could play a very influential role in helping to prevent bullying. So in other words, you might be sensing that your child might be getting teased at school for taking some of these extra precautions because you're trying to keep your family safe. Maybe you have an elderly grandparent, or your child has an elderly grandparent that is compromised in some way. Well, you want to make sure that you and your family take every possible precaution to keep that grandparent safe. And maybe somebody else's family doesn't have that person, or at least not living real close here. And so it's important to understand that every student may not follow the same precautions, but explain to your child, this is what we believe will keep you safe, and that's why we want to take these precautions. age-specific suggestions and best practices. All right, so again, this will go into some stuff that you can apply right now in helping your child develop some of those strategies that will help them be more resilient. So let's talk about early elementary. Making sure that you provide brief and simple information to them about what's going on and what to expect. So it's important that you give them a balance of facts about COVID-19 and the precautions that we need to take, coupled with that reassurance. Make sure that they understand that the adults are there to help keep them safe and healthy, both you as their parent or guardian, but also the teachers and staff at the school. The number one thing that the teachers that I talked to wanted me to get across is that they care about your son and daughter almost as much as you do and want to keep them as healthy and safe as possible. So explain to your child that not only are you as their parents there to help keep them safe, but also the people at school are there to help keep them safe and healthy as well, and that they will be taken care of if they get sick. And lastly, some of the simple steps that can stop germs and stay healthy. Talked about washing hands, singing happy birthday through 2 times, as well as coughing and sneezing into your sleeve, or your elbow, excuse me. Upper elementary and early middle school. Now this is the age group that will start to be asking some more what if questions. So what if we start school and something happens, somebody gets sick and we have to shut everything down again? What happens if I get sick? What happens if grandma gets sick? You know, they'll be asking some more of those in-depth questions. So be willing to answer those questions as much as possible. They may need some help in separating reality from rumor. So they, might be exposed now to more social media and certainly what their friends are hearing at home and being engaged in discussions. So they might need your help in, separating the facts from the fiction. Share with them the efforts that the school, the community, and the state are all doing to help prevent the spread of germs. The social distancing that we're doing, the masks that we're doing, the steps that are being taken within the community and even statewide to help keep people safe. These are the things that this age group can understand and can grasp. And again, helping them learn that we need to be respectful of others' perspectives. So other families might have a different situation than ours do or yours do. And so being able to help your young person understand and respect those positions and respect their choices about how to keep their loved ones safe is important. And this goes hand in hand with being on the lookout for bullying behavior. So if you believe that masks are necessary to keep your family safe, make sure that, for example, your child's not teasing other people who are not wearing masks. So making sure that you're in tune to those kinds of behaviors. Upper middle school and and high school. So discuss the issues. They're able to discuss these issues at more depth. So being able and willing to engage in these kinds of discussions and helping them find appropriate and valid sources of COVID-19 facts. Again, we want to make sure that they're relying on valid resources, reliable resources for where they're getting their information, and making sure that we provide honest, accurate, and factual information to this age group. And finally, engage them in helping to make the decisions about family plans and scheduling. So perhaps, you're wanting to go out to eat, engage them in finding a restaurant that's taking safe precautions to keep its patrons safe, or who's great at providing to-go meals that are really tasty, things like that. So all children, as far as suggestions, kind of some of the best practices, and I do have a best practices slide coming up. So make sure that they have the correct information and that you're squelching rumors as much as possible. Discourage talking down about others' decisions about sending kids to school or their decision to keep their kids home and doing remote learning. Again, everybody's decision, we need to respect other people's decisions about what's best for their loved ones. Encouraging them to verbalize their thoughts and feelings. So asking in-depth questions that allows you to kind of get past I feel good and I feel bad. And most importantly, last but not least, be a good listener. making sure that you are paying attention when you're asking those questions about how they're feeling, so that you really are there to support them. So I bring this slide back up for a reason, or this picture back up for a reason. Talked in the beginning about how important it is for you to understand that you help determine your child's attitudes. It's really important for you to discuss your frustrations in private, away from the kids. But most important, if you walk away with only two things: be there to be a sounding board for their worries and their disappointments and their frustrations as we proceed into the reopening of school and into the beginning of the fall semester. And do what you can to stay positive and model perseverance and resiliency for them, and start to teach them the skills and strategies for how they can build their resilience. So best practices: be a good role model, explain safety steps, demonstrate deep breathing strategies and healthy living strategies. I talked about some of the proactive strategies for building resilience: mindfulness, meditation, yoga, exercising, healthy nutrition, getting enough sleep. Those are some things that help increase resilience. Establish and maintain a daily routine. Kids want structure, they want routine. So even if you're having your child learn remotely, make sure that they're getting up, they have a bedtime. Do as much as you can to develop that routine. Be aware of how you're talking about COVID-19 in front of them, as well as what's happening in the schools and the decisions that are being made. And then finally, staying up to date on the facts and having the correct information to share with them. So the last thing that I want to do is I want to walk you through an activity. So you'll need a piece of pen a piece of paper and a pen. So, excuse me, if you need to press pause right now to get that, please do so. But I want to walk you through a quick self-assessment and why you should consider future workshops and courses that go deeper into everything that I've talked about today, as far as raising resilient kids, increasing your own emotional intelligence to develop the strategies that will help your child also build their resiliency. So again, one thing that I learned when I was talking with the various people and putting all of this together that I forgot to mention earlier. Across the board, parents, teachers, administrators, school leaders, counselors, everybody I talked to had three top priorities in mind. One was, want the best educational opportunity for my child and for our students, the best educational situation. We also want to make sure that we have the absolute best opportunity for our kids to interact in a social manner with other kids. Thirdly, we want to be able to do both of those things as safely as possible. So across the board, everybody had the same goals and objectives. So that's important for everybody to, I think, to understand, is that we all want the same thing for our kids in the situation of reopening schools. So let's dive into this quick self-assessment. What I want you to do is, on that piece of paper, on one side, I want you to think about the absolute most calmest person that you've been around and interacted with. And I'm going to read 6 statements, and I want you to rate this person from 1 to 5. 1 being that they demonstrate this behavior significantly less than other people, and 5 being that they demonstrate this particular behavior significantly more than other people. So hopefully you have this person in mind. If not, press pause during this whenever you need to catch up. And I'm going to read those 6 statements and want you to rate this person. All right, so having this very calm person in mind, how well does this person demonstrate awareness of their emotions? Excuse me, let me reread that. I'm getting tongue-tied after this much time. Demonstrates awareness of the impact their emotions have on how they interact with other people. If they do this significantly less than other people, give them a 1. If they seem to do this significantly more than other people, give them a 5. Next statement. Demonstrates awareness of the way they feel or their mood. Number 3, expresses their feelings in the right place and time. Number 4, shares how they feel with others. Number 5, responds effectively in stressful situations. And number 6, controls their anger when stressed. So now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to total those scores. You should have a total somewhere between 6 and 30. Total those scores and draw a circle around that number. I want you to be able to reference that later on. Next question about this calm person. On a scale of 1 to 10, to what degree are you able to relax around your calm person? In other words, if you're very relaxed and very happy when you're around this particular person, give yourself a 10. If you feel like you're walking on eggshells around this person, give them a 1. If it's somewhere in between, give them a number somewhere, rating in somewhere in between. Next, on a scale of 1 to 10, how approachable is this calm person? Again, if you feel as though you could go to them with anything at any time, give them a 10. If again, you feel like if you kind of have to determine whether or not it's safe or not to approach this person because you don't know what kind of mood they're going to be in, give them a 1. Okay. Now I'm going to have you do the same thing. I'm going to walk you through the same questions, same statements, but this time I want you to think about a person in your life who does not handle setbacks very well. Again, I want you to rate this person from 1 to 5 on these following statements. How well does this person demonstrate awareness of the impact their emotions have on how they interact with other people? Number 2, demonstrates awareness of the way they feel or their mood. Number 3, expresses their feelings in the right place and right time. Number 4, shares how they feel with others. Number 5, responds effectively in stressful situations. And number 6, controls their anger when stressed. Once again, total this set of scores and draw a circle around the total so that you can reference this total later on. All right, now let's rate this person on the scale of 1 to 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, to what degree are you able to relax around this person? If it's like walking on eggshells, give them a 1. If you're able to relax very easily around this person, give them a 10. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how approachable is this person? Do you feel confident that you could approach this person at any time of day and have a discussion with them or share a concern with them? If you can do so, give them a 10. If again, you're not always quite certain if they're going to be up for listening to you, give them a 1. All right. Now what I'd like you to do is I also want you to think about yourself and your child. So I'm going to read you the same 6 statements. And I want you to consider how well you do on these same 6 statements. First and foremost, how well do you demonstrate the awareness of the impact your emotions have on how you interact with other people? How well does your child do this? So keep two columns of numbers, one for you and one for your child. How well do you demonstrate awareness of the way you feel or your mood? And how well does your child do this? How well do you express your feelings in the right place and time? How well does your child do this? How well do you share how you feel with other people? How well does your child do this? How well do you respond effectively in stressful situations? And your child? And finally, how well do you control your anger when you're stressed? And how well does your child do this? So again, I want you to total those scores and draw a circle around the total for yourself and draw a circle around the total for your child. Now, Let's rate you and your child on these scales of 1 to 10. How well do you think, or to what degree, on a scale of 1 to 10, to what degree are others able to relax and be themselves around you? How about your child? On a scale of 1 to 10, how approachable are you? How approachable do you think your child is? Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to compare, let me go back a slide. I want you to compare those total scores, your calm person and your person that doesn't react well to um, stressful situations, with your score and your child's score. How do they align? How about the scales of 1 to 10? How well do those match, or how well do those align? How do you compare? How does your child compare? So the last thing I want you to do is a little bit of self-reflection. And this is an example of some of the things that we would do in further workshops on developing resiliency, as well as developing your emotional intelligence for you and your child. So consider the calm person. If you could emulate one thing from this person, what would it be and how would it benefit you? Just jot some notes down about that. And if your child could emulate one thing from this person, what would that be? And how would it benefit your child? Again, press pause if you need to have more time. And what about the person who does not handle setbacks very effectively? What's one thing this person does that you want to make sure that you don't do to other people? And what about your child? What's one thing this person does that you want to make sure your child doesn't do to other people? So this is an example of how we can go about enhancing emotional intelligence for you and your child, as well as building that resiliency. So as promised, I wanted to share the GENOS International Model of Emotional Intelligence. There are 6 competency areas associated with this particular model. And in the center column, those are the core emotional intelligence competencies: self-awareness, awareness of others, authenticity, emotional reasoning, self-management, and positive influence. And how we approach this is that we think of the competencies. There's productive states of being and there's unproductive states of being. So we say that somebody who's high in self-awareness is really present, and people who are low in self-awareness seem to be disconnected. And so you can see the words in the right-hand column that go along with being really skilled at that particular competency. So for example, people who are really good at being aware of others are thought of as being very empathetic, and people who are very low at awareness of others are thought of as being insensitive. So you can see how the rest of those flow down this particular slide. So Raising Resilient Kids future workshops and courses. Want you to know that I will be putting together some series of workshops if you're interested. So the way that you let me know about if you're interested in doing this is you go to the website that's listed on this slide. It's a bit.ly short survey. Ask one question. One question is, how are you feeling about returning to school? And then it allows you to give me your contact information if you're interested in further workshops on how you can raise the emotional intelligence for yourself, as well as teach your kids how to increase their emotional intelligence and build their resiliency. So the website is listed on this slide, but it's a bit.ly website. So it's bit.ly/Raising Resilient Kids. And again, there's only one question on there that I'd like you to answer. And then if you're interested in me reaching out and informing you about when these future workshops and courses are available, I will contact you via email. All right. So my contact information, again, thanks for taking the time to listen to all of this about raising resilient kids, returning to school during COVID-19. My contact information, if you are interested in further discussing any of these topics that I've shared with you during this time together, you can reach me by phone, 319-855-2237, or by email. My email address is Kelly, K-E-L-L-E-Y, at kellyashbyconsulting.com. You can also follow me on my social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Subscribe to my YouTube channel where I post some of the videos about some of these topics. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. So again, if you're interested in learning more about how you can further enhance your emotional intelligence and build your resiliency for yourself and your child, please get in touch with me. Thank you and have a great day. Good luck with the start of the school year.